Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Real podcast. We're so excited that you're with us. Each and every week, we're going to open up God's Word. We're going to have some discussion around what it means to live an intentional life. So let's listen in as we try to get real together.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Get Real podcast. My name is Amber Guindon and I'm the senior pastor at Real Life Ministries, Texas. And I am here with my good friend and podcast partner, Lori Arnold.
Hey y'all.
And we are continuing in our series on parenting and what a joy it is for me to have my wife, Amber, here. And if you missed our last episode, this is a 2-part episode. You want to go back and watch part 1. And we are in this series on what it looks like to parent in today's world. And this is what we do on this podcast. We talk about real life and what it looks like, the struggles, the successes and failures, and navigating that as disciples of Jesus and walking with him and trying to apply the word and live under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. And so hopefully that you've gained from our podcast, and it's been a blessing to you. And if this is your first time, I would encourage you to go and watch the rest of them and see what we're all about here on this podcast, and also to share it in social media, share it with your friends, because we believe very strongly in what we're talking about and navigating what it means to be a disciple of Jesus in real life and what that looks like. And so we want to jump right into this part 2 on parenting, and specifically the conversations that we have with our kids and what that looks like and how to have intentional conversation. In the first part of this, we spent more time talking about those conversations with kind of those elementary years and what that looks like. And now we're going to look at the teens and young adult, and it's similar principles, but boy, the conversation changes of what we talk about and what that looks like. And so, Lori, I'm going to go over to you first. And when you think about this and this topic of having these intentional conversations with teenagers, this is very much part of your everyday life right now.
Yes, it is.
And what that looks like, and kind of get us started.
Yeah. Ooh, boy. So I mentioned last time just the importance of intentionality and how hard it can be for me, especially when it comes to conversations with my children, because my house is loud and chaotic often at times. Just because we're loud. I'm loud. I can't put that on one of my kids. He's not loud. Yeah. But I'm loud and the other 2 are, and we got the dogs, and it's just a lot going on all the time. So one thing about this age group, that I found it to be very different in the sense that the conversations we are having, they're a lot more passionate. And they're deeper and more serious. They're not just surface level things. And yeah, we tried to break through some of that surface, when they're young as well. But this is very different because now we are preparing our teens to go out and be on their own.
Yeah.
So the conversation has definitely changed. Still asking questions, but I'm also like sometimes tap dancing, is what I feel like, just to kind of I got to know the temperature of the water. I got to know where they're at, each of them, and they're all at different places. And particularly my 2 oldest, I mentioned last time, my oldest just graduated high school, and then I have another one a few years behind. And just being aware of where they're at, because I have to pay attention. Are they looking for my advice right now? Are they wanting me to just listen? Like, what is this? And I will ask that question.
That's a great question.
Are you, and I asked Braden recently, are you wanting some advice about this? Mm-hmm. Yes. And he'll tell me straight up.
Yep.
And, a lot of times my other one, Donnie, she'll say, no, I just want you to listen. And that's great. And then I sit there and I listen.
Yeah.
And so learning, as much as I am a talker, how to shut my mouth in those moments has been integral, and it has helped tremendously. Just creating that safe place for her, especially. And I've mentioned it before, but making sure that my face is not necessarily showing what's going on the inside with some of the conversations that we have.
Yeah.
So those are all of the things that I initially think about when we talk about this.
That's great. It's great. Amber, I know one of the things that you've said, when we've talked about, conversations and parenting our 4 kids, when they were in those teen years, was still just barely holding on. Most of them are into their 20s now, but that age, as you made the comment several times about that there's a lot at stake in the conversation. There's a lot more at stake in this conversation, and depending on the topic. And so maybe share a little bit more about that, about kind of what you mean by that, kind of the gravity of some of the conversations.
Yes. The things they're dealing with now in their teens, these are decisions. They're starting to get decisions that could affect the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
It's no longer about whether one of them decided the biggest thing of the day was that one of them thought oranges would be good in the spaghetti sauce, and we gagged down dinner. Yeah. It was, choices their friends were making and what they thought of that. And it was choices as they entered more into other people's homes, and the things they saw, that even though I let them fail, there was definitely things we protected them from.
Right.
So I was a steep learning curve. And so, reminding them, like, I might be frustrated with you, but I love you, and that world doesn't care. And so, let's figure this out. But the cost of not having those sometimes very uncomfortable conversations was just too high.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to hear from both of you about this, and obviously speaking to it from a position of moms, and maybe then I'll speak in there on it as a position of a dad. But that issue right there of that cost of the topics, like sometimes I think parents, I've seen this being a pastor and being in ministry, is parents they're afraid to engage in it.
Yes.
Or afraid, or their kids are like, stay out of my business, and they get into this fight type of thing over, no, it's our right and call as a parent to step into some of those things, and the cost of not doing that can be so steep. So maybe speak to that when you get into those really tough topics in the world today that sometimes parents are afraid to step into. It might be sex, it might be stuff that they're seeing or participating in online, or whatever that those really hard topics are. So maybe, Lori, you share from that as a position as a mom from your position, and Amber, you will as well, about stepping into that on those hard topics.
Yeah, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but I know, like, I have to do this. I have to, because I don't want somebody else teaching my kids their way.
Yeah.
And we've been given instruction through God's word to train up our children in the way that they should go. And they're still my kids last time I checked,
Right.
And so I'd very much rather my children hear about some of those harder topics and subjects that are it's happening. It's already happening.
Correct.
I'd rather them hear it from me and from Kevin than from the kids at their school or people who aren't walking with the Lord. I want them to hear God's truth, and I want them to also have the ability to process some of the things that they're experiencing and to take ownership of their decisions as well, and learning how to navigate these things, because I keep mentioning it, but it's a big milestone, but we just graduated my kid.
Right.
And it feels like it was just yesterday that he was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And so there's not a whole lot of time. I feel like we got this short window of influence even, while they're in the home. He could move out next week. He's not. Thank God. I don't want him to move yet. But, he could be gone next week. And so I want to make sure that he is learning things while he is in our home before he's out there, on his own and having to figure it out for himself. So yes, we mentioned it last time, but make those mistakes while you're in the home, and especially one of the things that came up for us was dating. My parents had a certain rule for me. They said you couldn't date until you were 16. I thought I was stupid when I was 14.
Yeah.
You know, and then I became a parent and I understand a little bit more of the why. But one of the things I do want, even for my other two kids, I want them to date while they're in our home.
Right.
Because I want them to learn how to navigate that, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate.
Sure.
So having those conversations, yes, I forgot what you asked. It's okay.
You're doing great.
I know I derailed us a long time ago, but
You're doing great.
I know it weighs a lot. Like you said, the cost is too high. And so regardless of how I feel, regardless of how scary it is, and every single time I've done it, it's brought us closer together. I walk out the room and we are closer together than we were before.
That's great. So Amber, to you, same question is on these topics that are sensitive topics, they're difficult, about the importance of kind of pressing in. The cost is, as you said, is too high. What does that look like, or what just kind of thoughts, comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of discernment in that. Praise God, we were a team because we got to play to each other's strengths. And there were times when maybe it was a better fit for me to talk to the girls or me to talk to the boys or vice versa. I remember one time I came out of the bedroom and I told you, do not engage. And I just kept walking. And one of our daughters came out after me and you didn't listen. And I think every time after that I said, do not engage, you were like,
got it.
Hey.
Check.
But I think that's an example of us playing to our strengths.
Yeah, that's good.
Because there are just times when, it hurt my heart a little bit when my son didn't want to talk to me a little bit. Yeah. But I was like, he's opening up to dad. I'm going to be okay. Yeah. Or vice versa. Just depending on the situation, our kids we were fortunate to have 2 girls and the 2 boys. So a lot of things they were going through was a similar time period. But I had to put what I wanted down and what was the best thing for them. And sometimes the best thing for them was dad. Yeah. And even harder, sometimes the best thing for them was, especially for our boys, was allowing another safe adult male to speak into their lives, because at that moment they were not interested. Yes. And that was something that was very important to us. And I'm now derailing, but we spent time helping them cultivate relationships with other adults that we trusted. So when, because I never thought there was going to be that day where they couldn't talk to me, but there was. There was. But whatever Aaron said or Mike said, my goodness, they walked on water to 2 15 and 16-year-old boys.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that piece, it fits right in this part about cultivating these conversations at home, and it's okay, to fail and learn. And I think helping them to then bridge some of that to having other people around them, that can speak into their lives, both for boys and girls.
Absolutely.
And that's why, again, we believe in this so much, is the church being a community, that we do this together, that there's things that Olivia can come and talk to you about that maybe she was afraid to talk to mom or whatever. And I think all of us could admit, even though maybe it'll touch or hurt on our pride, but at the end of the day, we just want to win. Yeah. Right. We want them to love Jesus, to follow him, and to minimize the big bad decisions, and go, man, we're winning, kind of stumbling forward together. And I think those things are just, those are critical pieces. So let's go to this part. When you think about with teenagers and discipling them, so we're talking about intentional conversations and their walk with the Lord. What are some things maybe you would say that, taking a piece that's been really important in your conversation and helping to really intentionally disciple that in those teen years?
Yeah. One of the things for us has been the company that they keep. And finding that balance of, because it is like a dance sometimes, we've got to definitely listen, but we also want to pour into and give them some wisdom. but teaching them how to navigate healthy friendships, because we just have been mentioning like how important it is that we have community that we can go to, because they're not always going to listen to us, you know, and giving ourselves that permission too, to let other people in.
Right.
But anyway, it's one of the things for us has been just navigating friendships. So we do, especially with that, we ask a lot of questions. How are things going when things happen? You know, I'm trying to talk carefully because I don't want to tell all his business. But when, as a parent, I can tell when the company you're keeping is not the company you should be keeping. And so as a parent, I also know that if I flat out tell one of my kids that you shouldn't be hanging out with them, that's not going to fly. They're going to want to hang out with them even more. You know, we have a sin nature.
Yeah.
That's who we are. And so navigating that, but by modeling it for one, helping them, especially when mistakes happen, when those bad things, when failure happens, when they're in tough situations, letting them figure it out and them coming to terms with, that person is not my friend.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
You know, and this isn't a good situation for me. You know, so having, there's, like I said, it's kind of it's a balancing act here, because I don't want to tell them what to do. And you mentioned that earlier, they've got to figure out a lot of it on their own.
Yeah.
But still being present enough to have the conversations with them about how things are going, and then also to help guide them through it to get back on track is huge.
Yeah, that's great. Amber, what are your thoughts on that and the intentional conversation, discipling our kids?
Yeah, it's getting to that next level of, you were really good at this. I thought about it while I did it, to not ask why, to ask them questions that got them, instead of defending themselves or feeling like they're justifying themselves, but like really explaining the heart behind it, to try to get to that next deeper level of why and how. And then, yeah, I mean, we've had several things where we said, it's okay to fail. I'm not saying there's no consequences to failing, and I love you. And we walked through several hard consequences, giving them places to fail. You know, I always had a blanket. If you find yourself in a situation, I will always be the bad guy and pull you out of it to save face.
That's right.
I'm not saying it's a get out of jail free card, but I will get you out of that situation. You never have to sit in a situation where you realize I made a mistake. And I was happy to look like the crazy mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but that took a lot of conversations of them knowing I've let them fail a lot.
Yep.
The consequence has been appropriate, that they feel like they can tell me. Just getting to that next layer where their heart is, and not just, you know, they're doing it because, you know, whoever, where their real struggle was.
Yeah.
Our kids struggled with their relationship with the Lord, not struggled in a bad way, but figuring out who the Lord was and how that love worked in very different ways. And so figuring out what that thing they needed to figure out often was mostly between them and the Lord, and it just played out in a little bit different ways.
Yeah, that's really good. You had mentioned the part about, you know, not asking the why questions, and I mean, you know, you both know that to me, if I was to give one piece right there from kind of the dad perspective on it, is, and getting to those deeper layers, is being with my kids. Is I've had to learn about setting that issue aside. We've talked about the need to be right.
Yeah.
Truth doesn't need me to defend it, right? Kind of thing. Like, we'll get there, and right and wrong will work itself out. It will. But if I stay in the place of asking questions, so if we use the example, if I'm discipling Grady on a topic specifically, and he shares something that is not wise, or it's immature, asking questions like, well, where do you think that will go? What do you think the end result will be? Like the issue of friends. Where do you see your friend going? What do you think the end result will be? how is this making life better? What has happened to this point? Like and they know, I'm going to barrage them with those questions to peel back. And when they give me the answer, saying, well, here's what I heard you say, and I'll repeat back to them. Here's what I heard you say, repeat back to them over and over on those things. And it's funny, typically by question 3, they've already figured it out. They're like, I just sound like an idiot. Like, right. And I don't have to tell them. And what happens is right and wrong comes out. And they're like, yeah, Dad, this isn't right. This isn't going to work. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you came to that, son. Like, and so I think those intentional questions, some of the podcasts we've talked about before, interjecting some of that in. But I think to the point that you said, and both of you said, we can't sit back and be passive. We, it's not being a helicopter parent.
Right.
And we got to hover over everything. But when those subjects come up, not being afraid to step in, not being afraid to ask, sometimes it is just listen. And sometimes we do need to give advice, inject truth into the situation. And so I think playing some of that stuff out and is good is helpful. So let's close on this one again. Question, I'll start with you, Lori, and then I'll come back to you, Amber. It's just that parent that's out there that's like, I just feel like it's a mess with my teenagers right now. Yeah. I don't know what to do. What would you say to them to give them some hope?
The phrase "listen to understand" just keeps coming to mind. It's something that I practice, that I still work at. I think it's very easy as a parent to want to just tell my kid what to do and how they should do it. Yeah. Where to go, all the things. But in order to get to this place that we're talking about where they do feel safe with us, where they do want to come to us to get advice, we've got to be willing to listen, to understand, as opposed to just hear them or to get our point across. Yeah. Let them talk to get our point across. We've got to really listen to them so that we can hear their hearts and what's really going on.
That's really good. That's great. Excellent. Amber?
Yeah, I think creating opportunities to elicit those conversations, especially if you haven't been doing them. What do they like? What do they like to do? My daughter loved the mall. Yeah. I hated the mall. But if going to the mall, and I didn't have to spend any money, taking her to a place that was her joy, that I would invest in her, like, do something that they want to do and then wait for the opportunity because you're doing something they want to do. And it kind of starts to bring maybe some of the walls down. So I think if you haven't done it before, trying to do that's what I would say is just because you're trying to manufacture an opportunity does not make it not genuine. Right. You are genuinely trying to spend time with them. And I think that really helps us start to give you a leg up.
That's so great. And I'm going to just brag on Amber for a moment, because with our one son, he's difficult relation. He's quiet. He's an introvert, all of those things. Yeah. And she would sit for 2 hours and watch anime cartoons with him. And I don't understand it. That's not, and I don't think she understood it. But her discipline to sit there and just, that spoke love to him. And now, I mean, they have a great relationship, and he talks with her, and he does with me as well. But she was willing to sit and to walk around the mall, to do those things, to create those opportunities, and so to just get started doing that. So, well, hopefully for all of you, be able to pull some nuggets out of this and make some applications to your parenting and opening up those conversations with your kids, because the cost is too high to not do it. And so hopefully you were encouraged and felt like you have some tools or some steps that you can take. And again, if this podcast is blessing you and encouraging you, then we just ask that you would share it with others, share it with your friends and family. And we're grateful to have you all. God bless you.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the Get Real podcast today. My hope each and every week is that you're able to take the content, apply it to your life, that it becomes more of who you are and less of what you do, and that we live an intentional life together. If you're interested in supporting the work of ministry here at Real Life Texas, we'd like to invite you to do that by going to reallifetexas.org/give and supporting us today.